Today we're talking about my early top 12 running back rankings coming right up. And welcome to the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for joining me today. Today is Monday, June 8th, 2020. My name is Chip and I'm your host. If you are a new listener, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on Stitcher. You can also watch us on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. So, today's Monday. After a long weekend, how did everyone's weekend go? Today, kind of feeling the Monday blues. I'm kind of, it's kind of hard because my job, I practice physical therapy and we had to cut down on some hours. So now I usually have Mondays off and I work Tuesday through Friday, but because of everything going on with the stay-at-home orders and all that stuff that we had in place, we had to switch my days where I'm off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's really hard to go to bed late and wake up and kind of get in that routine of being a night owl and then trying to kind of recalibrate for the work week and going back to work on a Monday. So it definitely is challenging for me. Luckily, I go to work this afternoon, so I was able to sleep in a little bit, but still, it's really, really hard when you go to bed really late and then you try to wake up early enough to be able to do this type of stuff. So, hey, it's part of it and I enjoy it. So I hope everyone had a good weekend. I hope everyone found some fun. I know here in Western Washington, things are starting to feel kind of normal. There's a waterfront area that I go to hang out, and my nephew's still in town. My nephew came and visited me last week, and he wanted to stay for another week. And it was kind of nice to be able to see some normalcy back into life in general. People at the restaurants and people just hanging out, walking on the waterfront. It really felt like things were finally getting back to normal. So I hope everyone had a good weekend, and I hope that you're able to do something that you could, that you enjoyed. So. But today we're going to be talking about my top 12 running backs for 2020. These are, like I said, as always, these are early, so things can change. But I wanted to make this list and, so here it is. Let's jump right into it. At number 12, I have Miles Sanders. Last year he ended the season at RB15. Now the Eagles offense is a run offense. It was ranked 11th last year, and Miles Sanders really emerged in December. I think once after Jordan Howard went down, because Jordan Howard was the premier goal line back. So I think when he was out with the injury, it really helped Miles Sanders finally emerge, and it was nice to kind of see that because he was highly on my draft board last year. I really wanted Miles Sanders. He was one of the guys I wanted to get late in the draft, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. I did get him in a couple leagues, in my dynasty leagues and all that, but there was one league that I really wanted him in, and I just couldn't get him. But it was nice to be able to see how the potential is there for Miles Sanders. Last year he tallied, 80 rushing attempts for 390 yards and 2 touchdowns in December. He also added 23 receptions for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, like I stated before, he did start off the season pretty slow. He really came on, like I said, when Jordan went down. He was mostly utilized when the Eagles were winning. So when they're in that, middle tier 8 to 14 point lead, that's where Miles Sanders got the bulk of his fantasy production. And then, he's an excellent receiver out of the backfield. He was averaging 8.2 yards per target. I do think if he gets the workload, it'll be no question he's a borderline RB1. However, the Eagles are trying to add another piece to the running game. There's been talks where they try and get Devontae Freeman or they're trying to get LaShawn McCoy again. And that really concerns me because we all wanted to see Miles Sanders, become that workhorse back, being a dual threat in the passing game and in the rushing game. And the fact that the Eagles are still trying to add a piece, it could really limit his ceiling when it comes to his fantasy production. But, until that actually happens, regardless, I still think he's a value at number 12. I think he may potentially be overdrafted, but I think he is going to be a good value at that particular part of the draft where he's coming off the board, probably around that 12 running back, area. So we'll see, but I have him at 12. Now this one, it may sound off a little bit, but my number 11 running back for this year is Aaron Jones. I know he was the number 2 running back last year. I get it. He had the most touchdowns. He was tied most for total touchdowns with 19. I understand the production was there. However, he was really efficient last year. I mean, he scored 19 total touchdowns. However, he was a boom or bust running back. And that was concerning because he never had consistent outings every single week. And he scored over 20 points 6 times. And then he added 5 times, adding 5 times last year, he scored in single digits. Now, he will no doubt see touchdown regression. He's definitely going to see that. He's not going to score another 19 touchdowns. However, he is the lead back in Green Bay. He also is the type of player that when they are down, they're going to use him. They're going to put him as a pass-catching running back. He's going to have that production. However, I am concerned because you already have Jamal Williams there. Then you add A.J. Dillon. And I just don't get it. I don't understand why the Packers decided to add another running back to their roster when they already have 2 running backs in Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Adding a big running back like A.J. Dillon, I just feel like will take away from his goal line opportunities. And I am just not sure if that was really needed. Now, I know he's come up in a contract year, and maybe they're trying to draft players and think about if they cannot sign Aaron Jones back, but they just need to let him just unleash him. They just have to let him just have that production, because if you continue to add pieces and you're trying to limit his production, I just don't know. I don't get it, but I'm just still not understanding the whole Packers draft this year. I mean, they didn't draft for need. They drafted for seems like just work that they're going to have to, players that they're going to have to kind of work into their system and eventually maybe take over. I just don't get why they did that. And for me, A.J. Dillon is just another threat to the goal line. I don't see how you have a guy that's that size come in as a rookie and not give him goal line opportunities. It's just mind-boggling. And I think personally that Aaron Jones is going to be overdrafted. I really think that people are going to see what he did last year and they're going to jump all over him early on in the draft. And I just think they're going to be disappointed in what production could come from that. So just be really careful. I still think he is going to be a good running back this year. I don't think he's going to be in the top 5, but we'll see. Hopefully they do give him that workload. Hopefully they'll allow him to flourish in the system and be that lead back. But for right now, he's at number 11. Now at number 10, I have Austin Eckler. He was a running back 4 last year, and I love him this year. I love Austin Eckler. I think he's a value in PPR formats. You can definitely see he was up for the challenge last year when Melvin Gordon decided to hold out for the games he did. He was more effective as a receiver than as a runner. So the Chargers had a rushing offense of 28th in the league, which obviously is way down there. And he tallied up 92 receptions on 102 targets and nearly 1,000 yards with 8 touchdowns through the air. I don't think he gets the same amount of wide receiver work this year because I do believe Eckler benefited from immobile Phillip Rivers. And he was just a product of just dumping passes off to Eckler because he just couldn't get around. He was kind of a safety outlet. So I think that with Austin Eckler having now maybe Tyrod Taylor is a mobile quarterback. Tyrod Taylor is going to be pushing the ball down the field. I just don't see a lot of those dump passes happening. And that's still true with the rookie quarterback they have as well, like Herbert. I don't think he's going to be dumping off passes to Eckler like it happened last year. I think what needs to happen with Eckler, I think he needs to establish himself better as a runner, which I think is inevitable due to the fact that now he's the lead back. He has to get more yards in the rushing game. Even if his receiving yards and his receptions take a dip, maybe you see an uptick in production from the running game because I think he got re-signed to be that lead back. So he did run the ball 132 times for 557 yards. So obviously he, like I said before, he was more effective in the air. But I still think of him as a fringe RB1 in PPR formats, and hopefully they give him all the work he can handle, and he becomes that stud he was last year when he was finished the season with being the running back 4. Now for running back 9, I have Kenyan Drake. I think Kenyan Drake's going to have a great season. He was traded from Miami to Arizona at the trade deadline, which when that happened was a very big head scratcher because they already had David Johnson, and it didn't make really much sense why they traded for Kenyan Drake. But then you saw the more games he was with Arizona, you kind of saw how they were going to use him, and that gets me excited to see Kenyan Drake actually be a lead back and actually be in an offense that really takes his strengths and allows him to produce, because when he was at Miami, just like every other player that played in Miami, I mean, Adam Gase really hindered a lot of players' potential. And I do think that he did come on strong at the end of last year, and he won a lot of people fantasy championships. I mean, he averaged 27.5 points in the fantasy playoffs. And in the 8 games he played for Arizona, he averaged close to 80% of the snaps. He's a good runner. He can contribute in the passing game with 50 receptions last year. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Drake creep into the top 5 running back discussion this year. I mean, especially being the same explosive offense from last year. I don't see, if he plays a full 16 games and he's completely healthy, I cannot see how Kenny Drake does not end the season in the top 5 running backs. I mean, there's enough pieces around him where that can be a very feasible thing to happen. So Kenny Drake's at number 9. All right, now number 8. This one's a really tough one to kind of rank because I have Nick Chubb at number 8, and I do still think he will have more value in standard leagues than in PPR. I mean, he came out last year hot. He started the season just hot as anything, and he was the RB6 until Kareem Hunt came back after the suspension. So when you saw that, you really then saw Hunt get more work in the passing game, and Chubb only scored 2 total touchdowns since their bye week. So you really saw the increase in what Kareem Hunt was getting compared to Nick Chubb, and it really took away from Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb was still running the ball well and everything like that, but his touchdowns weren't there, and he wasn't getting the same receptions that he was in earlier in the season when Kareem Hunt was suspended. So it's really concerning to me because he also only has 16 receptions since the bye week. So with the 2 total touchdowns and then 16 receptions total through after the bye week, that's concerning if you're trying to look at him as your RB1 in a PPR league. In standard it's going to be a little different, but I think he's still a good running back to own. However, based on format, he may not be someone to target as an RB1 in PPR leagues. Kareem Hunt, without a doubt, is too good not to be integrated into the offense. He definitely will cause Chubb's ceiling to be very limited. So I like Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is a guy that I had when he was a rookie. He helped me win a fantasy championship, but just the dynamic of Kareem Hunt really makes me concerned for his ceiling. So I have Nick Chubb at number 8. At running back 7, I have Derrick Henry. Now I know last year he was the RB5. He led the league in rushing yards with 1,540. He had 16 rushing touchdowns. I mean, there's not much I can say about Derrick Henry. The guy's a massive human being. He's a beast. He's fun to watch. But my concern with Henry is that he doesn't catch the ball often out of the backfield. He can also be limited to the Titans if the Titans are in a negative game script. I mean, we saw it a lot last year when they were losing. They really didn't use Henry very often because he's not a pass-catching running back. And personally, I still think he gets double-digit touchdowns. I just don't think the Titans I think the Titans were really efficient last year, and that may be a catalyst to this year. I don't think they'll be as efficient. I think there's enough game tape on them where they're going to see how Ryan Tannehill plays, kind of the tendencies that he had, and how they can stop Derrick Henry. Now, I'm not saying they can stop Derrick Henry in any defense, but I think they will have more of a game plan on how that whole offense is, and so I definitely can see some efficiency taking a hit. So I'm personally excited to kind of see what the Titans do with Ryan Tannehill in a full season. He played out of his mind last year. I loved seeing that because he has so much potential in Miami that he just never able to tap into until he left Adam Gase and then went to Tennessee. So, I definitely still want Henry in all standard leagues, but in PPR, there might be better options out there for you. So just make sure you pay attention to that and go from there. But Derrick Henry is definitely my RB7 for the season. And number 6, I have Joe Mixon. Now, Joe Mixon was RB13 last year. The Bengals rush offense was not very good. It was at 25th overall. Now, I personally am a huge fan of Joe Mixon. I have him almost every single year. And especially in PPR formats, he's definitely going to get the love, that he deserves based on, I hope that, I always loved the fact that he was a complete back. He can run the ball between the tackles. He can catch the ball. You ask him to do anything, Joe Mixon can do. I think he's a very underrated running back overall. And however, I just don't understand why the Bengals don't use him more in the way that he's most strongest at. So it's kind of frustrating as a football fan to see so much potential not being used. But he's a natural pass catching running back. I mean, last year he only had 35 receptions, but despite the ups and downs last year, he still managed over 1,000 yards on the ground. Mixon last year was dropped in a lot of leagues. I remember I picked him up in my main league because the owner that had him just got tired of waiting around for him to kind of emerge. And eventually he got dropped, and then I was able to pick him up. And he performed well for me. I mean, he had great games after the bye week, and unfortunately he didn't perform in the fantasy championship game for me. Now that I play in week 16 is the fantasy championship game. However, he had an illness, so you can't get really mad at a guy that has an illness. I mean, he got sick, he tried to play, wasn't effective. I mean, that stuff happens in football. And I know some people may not think that he'll get that production in the receiving game because of Joe. You have Joe Burrow as the running back, or at the quarterback position. But I do think that actually helps him. I do think having Joe Burrow as a rookie quarterback, I think he's going to try to find that really quick safety outlet to the running back position. Just having Joe Mixon just kind of hang out while the play develops, just in case he needs somebody to throw the ball to. Now, if Andy Dalton was the quarterback still, I think I'll be a little more concerned when you have A.J. Green coming back, you have Giovanni Bernard, you have Tyler Boyd, you have some other good receivers around him. I would think Andy Dalton would be worse for Joe Mixon this year, but I think having a rookie quarterback, I think actually helps him. So that's just my opinion. But it's just one of those things that I do think the head coach will really try to use Joe Mixon. I mean, if they just watch the tape, which I know they are. I mean, I'm not a head coach, I'm not a GM, I'm not any front office personnel, but the talent's there for Joe Mixon. So I do think that he needs to be utilized a lot better. However, the quick note about Joe Mixon is that he wants a new contract. And so it's something to pay attention to because that may be something that we really have to focus on, because if he's not re-signed, there could be a holdout, and it will suck to be able to to draft someone like Joe Mixon so high in your drafts, and then he sits out the majority of the season or the whole season or whatever until he gets a new contract. So just pay attention to the news about Joe Mixon and see kind of how that plays out with the contract dispute. Now at number 5, I have Alvin Kamara. I mean, it's no secret. If you look right here over my shoulder, if you're watching YouTube, I have Alvin Kamara's signed helmet behind me, and it's no secret. If you watch some of my videos, I'm a huge fan of Alvin Kamara. He's one of my top 2 players I love watching. Him and Patrick Mahomes are by far my favorite players. And last year was a down season for Alvin Kamara. I mean, he did finish at RB9. However, it's really, he was injured, so he didn't play a lot of last season on a healthy ankle. He had a high ankle sprain. He even mentioned that he was only 75% when he came back from being injured. However, he's a fun guy to watch. And now I'm a therapist and a trainer, so I don't know if anybody else watched his workouts from last season and some of the things he was doing with the balancing, exercise and all. And it's really fun to watch players do things like that, because I know how hard that is being in the field and seeing these players do these things. And to see him do things with ease makes it seem why he's able to do the things he does on the field is so effective. Like, he's very smooth with his movements. He just do things on the field that's unexplainable. And Alvin Kamara by far is a fun guy to watch. I mean, I know that some of you guys may not appreciate those things when it comes to actual like the workouts and all that, but from my point of view and that perspective, I think it's really cool to see when all these players show what they do as workouts, and then you see how that translates to on the field. I mean, it's a cool thing to experience. But last year he wasn't efficient. That was the downfall for Alvin Kamara. He was injured with the high ankle sprain. He wasn't 100%, and he just wasn't as efficient like he was the last 2 seasons. Now, but when he plays receiver, he is a force to deal with. Like, when he plays, a receiver out of the backfield, I mean, he is definitely good. I mean, he's averaged 81 receptions and 100 targets per season. So, like, he is used, and it's weird how in the last 3 seasons he's had 81 receptions. I mean, they use him all the time in the passing game, and the Saints will continue to limit his touches. It's inevitable. They like using Murray as another person to be able to get those hard yards. But what my concern was as well from last year was the way they integrated Taysom Hill into the goal line packages and the red zone packages, because that's the only thing that really kept Alvin Kamara being RB5 and higher. He got the goal line work. He got the touchdowns. Now, he was scoring on long touchdowns as well. But last year, their packages were totally different. They didn't really use Alvin Kamara as much on the goal line. And he just didn't score, So he did come out, week 16 and 17, he did have 2 touchdowns per game. So if you made it to the fantasy championship, you saw finally the Alvin Kamara that we are used to. But unfortunately, I'm just kind of nervous about that new offense with Taysom Hill, and then adding, Emmanuel Sanders and all those other players. Like, I'm hoping that he still stays at RB5, but it's definitely something to think about. But I have no concern having Alvin Kamara as my number 1 running back. Just like every year, he's my guy. I go after him every single season. So I will continue to do that even this year. So he's a solid RB1. Don't stress about it. Now, RB4, I have Dalvin Cook. Last year he was RB6, and we all know the Vikings are a rush offense. Like, they are 6th overall in rushing, and we know, like, Dalvin Cook last year was the steal of the draft, I believe, based on his ADP. He was on fire from the start. Like, he was unstoppable. He was putting up massive points. He only trailed Christian McCaffery for fantasy points in the first 14 weeks. Now, the problem is his durability. He hasn't played a full season since he was drafted as a rookie. He plays in a run-heavy offense, but he's able to give you production as a wide receiver as well. I mean, he's a solid RB1 without question. Don't hesitate to draft Dalvin Cook. If you want to protect the high draft capital on Dalvin Cook, I would suggest grab Alexander Mattison. Even though he's going to be your handcuff, you actually could use Mattison as what we saw the Cleveland Browns do with Kareem Hunt. In certain matchups and plus matchups, you can see Alexander Mattison being a good flex play. I would do that, especially if I had Dalvin Cook. I definitely would try to target Mattison, just because I just want to have that security based on what happens to Dalvin Cook usually every year, where there's some type of injury that takes place that makes him miss a couple games. So RB4, Dalvin Cook is a safe position to draft him at. Now, RB3, I have Ezekiel Elliot. He was RB3 last year. That's where he finished. The rush offense was 5th last year for the Dallas Cowboys. But honestly, did it really feel like Zeke ended the season at RB3? Did it ever feel like he won you your weeks in fantasy? The answer for me is no. He was just a really consistent running back that really didn't take over games. He didn't really have those 40-point games. He didn't really have those big blow-up games. He was just super consistent. And honestly, for a running back, that's what you want. You want to see guys who are consistent, that you can set and forget, that are matchup proof. And when you have a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, it was weird to kind of see, how everything all played out, from the holdout to being signed, to kind of see him be kind of sluggish in the first half of the season. I mean, luckily enough, he only had one single-digit fantasy outing, so he continues to be a workhorse. He plays behind a great offensive line. I mean, he rarely comes off the field. You don't have to worry about goal line work being taken away from him. I don't think you can go wrong with Zeke. He's the feature back in a high-powered offense. He's an RB1 all day. I personally like to see him have a bump up in receptions. However, I just don't see that likely happening this year because when you have Amari Cooper, you have Michael Gallup, and then you add CeeDee Lamb to the offense, I really don't know where those targets are going to come from, and I really don't think that you'll see a much higher, target share for Zeke. So hopefully he gets more efficient with the touches that he does get through the air on the ground. But Zeke is a safe RB, running back 1 next year, and I can still see him finishing in the top 5. Now at RB2, I have Saquon Barkley. I mean, it's no secret who my last 2 running backs are going to be on my rankings. Last year, Saquon Barkley ended at RB10. Now, the Giants only have the 19th overall rushing offense last year, so it's really middle of the pack. It's really not, what you would hope for someone who's an elite running back like Saquon Barkley, but he can make plays regardless. He's an elite running back for fantasy. There's really nothing else to say about Barkley. I mean, he will be drafted 2nd overall in the most redraft in Dynasty leagues. He still managed to be an RB1 after missing 3 games after suffering a high ankle sprain. I mean, I personally think he came back way too early. That's my medical opinion. I know he's a freak of nature, but I think he needed to at least stay out a couple more weeks just to get a lot more healthier. We did see some inconsistent fantasy production after he came back from his injury. However, week 15 and beyond was a different story. He looked like he was as healthy as anything and back to elite player he was. He is the all-around workhorse back. He definitely is no way a risk this year. He is going to be a stud like he was as a rookie. They're going to use him in all different ways. I still think that Saquon Barkley is going to be and finish as the top 2 running back this year. Now, we don't know how injury is going to take place, but I really do think that it is definitely safe to take Saquon Barkley, as your number 2, overall number 2. Now, obviously, my RB1 in my rankings is Christian McCaffery. I mean, it's no secret. It's on every analyst draft board. RB1 is Christian McCaffery. There's really, like I said, nothing much to say about him either. He's the top fantasy pick this year, in my opinion. You want to enjoy him as you can, as much as you can, because I personally don't think he can hold up and handle the workload he had last year, year in and year out. Now, I know that with the new scheme coming in, with Matt Rule coming in, I know he played 93% of the Panthers' plays last year, but we can't expect the same production to happen this year that happened last year. Last year, he had a total of 2,392 total yards. He had 403 total touches and then 19 total touchdowns. I mean, I just don't see that being the same production. He's going to have some regression. Now, he's still going to be a stud. We all want Christian McCaffrey. There's no doubt. I love Christian McCaffrey, but I think that even if he has some loss in production, he has a really good chance being the RB1 next year. And it's just going to be interesting to see how the addition of head coach Matt Rule is, how that's going to affect McCaffrey, and also when bringing in Teddy Bridgewater, and then bringing in Robbie Anderson to bulk up the wide receiver group. I'm very intrigued to kind of see how they're actually going to use Christian McCaffrey, if they use him as much or they try to bring someone else in to kind of help with the workload. But we know that he can, Christian McCaffrey can handle the workload. It's just a matter of how long and how durable he's going to be with it. So we'll see. But regardless, he's the best dual threat running back in today's game. He's a set and forget type of player. Pick him first overall. Don't hesitate. So that is my top 12 running back rankings. I hope you enjoy the rankings. I hope that there's agreement with all of them. It's one of those things where I try to look at all the players that are in my top 12, and it's definitely really hard to find guys that could creep up in the top 12 and be an RB1, but I have, I'll go through my list again. I have Miles Sanders at number 12. I have Aaron Jones at number 11. I have Austin Eckler at 10. I have Kenyan Drake at number 9, Nick Chubb at number 8, Derrick Henry at number 7, Joe Mixon at number 6, Alvin Kamara at number 5, Dalvin Cook at number 4, Ezekiel Elliot at number 3, Saquon Barkley at number 2, and I have Christian McCaffery as my number 1 running back in my rankings. So thank you today for listening. Let me know if you found value from this episode. Please leave a comment. I really appreciate your feedback. I really appreciate hearing what you guys think. This is all about community. It's all about trying to find out, what you guys think and how we could agree to disagree on certain things, but also see where you guys have certain players ranked. So it's great to have that communication. Next episode, I'll be discussing my early top 12 wide receiver rankings for 2020. So don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at the Gridiron Pod, and on Instagram at Gridiron Fantasy Football. That's it for today. Have a great day, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Take care.